Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Corey Hughes' Bloody History. So I really like to spend a lot of my spare time just doing random searches through the government archive of Kennedy releases from 2017 onward, because that's what normal people do in their spare time. But I go and I put in certain keywords, and certain things pop up, and other things don't pop up, and so that's what I was doing today. And so I started down a rabbit hole that ended up taking me away from the NSIA site and over to the Black Vault. And we're looking into some Oswald in New Orleans. It's a document dated 1/19/1976, must be part of the House Committee on Assassinations. Subject: New Orleans Police Department, Schweiker Subcommittee, Oswald Lee Post-Russian Period. Date of last review, 3/21/2000. This seemingly was released in the October 2017 releases. And there's a couple things that caught my attention in here, and that's why we're going to be going over it today, that I thought was pretty blockbuster, at least from the metadata. I hope the metadata actually matches this. This is actually not from the HSCA. This is a miscellaneous report of the Church Committee. We'll get to the Church Committee at some point, but it was kind of, I don't know. None of these fucking committees ever solved anything. All they did was give us all the documents, which is pretty good. But this document caught my attention, and I'm not going to tell you why it caught my attention. I'm going to see how well you know me and you know my show, and I'm going to let you figure it out. It should, if you're familiar with my work, scream at you when we get there. It's 159 pages long. We should be on this for 3 or 4 days. So, memorandum, January 19th, 1976, to files from Paul Wallach, reference Oswald in New Orleans. This morning I called the Chief Guy Russo of the NOPD for the purpose of determining whether Oswald was arrested in New Orleans, other than on August 9th, 1963. Lieutenant Hunt transferred me to Major Earl Burmasters, explaining that he was the keeper of records. After explaining that we were merely asking a question that had not been asked and not investigating the New Orleans Police Department, I inquired as to whether there were any other arrests or records on Oswald. Burmaster called me back and suggested that I call Sergeant Wenstein in the intelligence unit. I spoke with Sergeant Wenstein, who promised to get back to me. At 3:30 p.m., I called Wenstein again. He was out of the office, but had left the matter with Sergeant Loicano. He was most cooperative, and with the Oswald file in hand, stated that the rap sheet revealed only the August 9th, 1963 arrest. Included in the documents pertaining to said arrest was a memorandum by Lieutenant August Lang and an August 12th, 1963 inter-office memo to Major Prossens. I thank the sergeant for his cooperation, leaving my phone number should anything else come to this attention. So this is interesting, and I'll tell you why, because there was another arrest made in New Orleans, allegedly of Oswald, but of course there's no records on it. But still, nonetheless, the legend of this arrest persists. If I'm not mistaken, it was at a time that Oswald was in the Soviet Union, and therefore who could it have been? Obviously Kerry Thornley, but it's been erased from history. He was arrested out of a pickup truck loitering with some other Hispanic guy, probably a Cuban. But we'll get to that one day. Memorandum to files from Dan Dwyer, May 13th, 76. Reference LBJ Library, Kennedy assassination. Sharon Fawcett of the LBJ Library called me back this morning about my inquiries of May 12th, 1976. Ms. Fawcett checked library materials to determine if there were any records indicating what was discussed at a May 10th, 1967 meeting attended by Johnson Helms and George Christian. Fawcett told me that the diary backup records have a note about the May 10th, 67 meeting, which reads, Richard Helms wants to see you about Drew Pearson column. Fawcett also reported that there were no memos reflecting a March 22nd, 1967 meeting between Johnson and Helms, Cater, McPherson, and Gardner. Fawcett said that the meeting probably was about the Katzenbach academic study and possibly about the Guam conference, which occurred the week before. I again listed the materials Fawcett promised to send to the committee. 1, a list of Helms' meetings in the White House during the Johnson administration. 2, copies of Johnson's daily diary logs from March 19th to 27, 67, and April 24 to May 23, 67. And a pink sheet listing Marvin Watson FBI memos regarding the Garrison trial, which are withheld because of derogatory personal information. 4, the Johnson Library's public statement on the taping system in the Johnson White House. 5, copy of the backup diary notes for May 10th, 67. And 6, a list of agenda for May 11th and 16th, 67, meetings at the White House. Just note, Jack Valenti is out of the White House by this time. He's out of the White House by September of 66. All right, so memorandum to files from Dan Dwyer, May 12, 1976, LBJ Library Materials. Sharon Fawcett of the LBJ Library called me back and provided the following information about meetings between Johnson and Helms in meetings at the White House, which Helms attended. March 27, 67, from 7:27 to 8:38 p.m. Johnson, Helms, John Gardner, Nicholas Katzenbach, Harry McPherson, and Douglas Cater. Presumably meeting about the Katzenbach study on the CIA use of academics. May 3rd, 67, National Security Council. May 10th, 67, Helms, George Christensen, and Johnson. May 11th, 67, Johnson, Humphrey, Rusk, McNamara, Helms, Rostow, and George Christian. May 16th, 67, Johnson, Humphrey, Rusk, McNamara, Helms, Rostow, George Christian, and Earl Wheeler. May 21st, 67, Johnson called Helms. May 22nd, 67, Johnson called Helms. Ms. Fawcett said she would call back tomorrow after checking for any memos reflecting topics discussed at the meetings on March 22nd, 67 and May 10th, 67, and if the telephone conversations between Johnson and Helms were taped. Additionally, Ms. Fawcett said she would forward a list of all of Helms' meetings at the White House and copies of Johnson's daily logs for the days listed above. To files from Dan Dwyer, May 12, 76. I called Sharon Fawcett of the LBJ Library in Austin this morning and informed her that Epstein and I saw Marvin Watson at his home in California, and that Mr. Watson showed us about 4 filing cabinets in the basement of his home, which he represented to contain papers from the White House. I also informed Ms. Fawcett that Watson had said he was moving back to Texas at the end of May and would deposit those files in the Johnson Library. I also requested Fawcett send the committee the library's public statement regarding Johnson's taping system and the list of Marvin Watson memos and FBI memos dealing with the Garrison investigation withheld from research because of derogatory material. I also asked Ms. Fawcett to check the library's materials for any meetings involving Helms between March 19th and 23rd, 1967, and April 24th to May 22nd, 1967. Fawcett promised to check and call me back at midday. She also mentioned that the president met with Defense, State, and CIA every Tuesday to discuss national security affairs, but there were no memos of these meetings until late 67. Ms. Fawcett also informed me that Dick Jacobs, deputy archivist for the presidential libraries, was the archives official in Washington who would be handling our document requests from Austin. Memorandum to Paul Wallach from Bob Kelly. As I mentioned to you, Senator Mathias is making an investigation of his own as a member of the Select Committee, as permitted by committee procedures, into the aspect of the possible connection between Operation Mongoose and the JFK assassination. In this connection, he is interested in obtaining any FBI documents concerning contacts between a Cuban exile, Jose Aleman, Aleman, and FBI agents, among which were S.A. George Davis and Paul Scranton. He understands that in 62 to 63, Aleman had regular meetings with Santos Traficante, which Aleman reported to S.A. Davis and Scranton. In particular, Senator Mathias is interested in any documents relating to a meeting between Aleman and Davis and Scranton on November 22nd or 23rd, 63, the day or the day after the assassination. Also, Aleman may have had a meeting with FBI agents on April 17th, 71, the day of the Bay of Pigs invasion. What? That's correct. That's false. 61. I would appreciate it if you would make a request to the FBI for material relating to the above. All designees from Paul Wallach reference executive session testimony of Edward P. Morgan and Hank Greenspun. Attached for your review is a copy of an article captioned Fidel Castro ordered Jack Kennedy's death as it appeared in the March 1st, 1976 edition of the Las Vegas Sun. You will note that Hank Greenspun wrote, quote, "Evidence in my possession provides a clearly marked trail leading to logical conclusions as to why the Kennedy brothers were killed. That path leads straight to the door of a vengeful Castro." That's interesting. That might be... Let me see. That's really interesting. This is the closest thing I've ever had of Hank Greenspun commenting on the assassination because I can't get a hold of the Greenspun letter. At the instruction of the committee, Fritz and I have for the past 2 weeks attempted on a daily basis without success to contact Greenspun telephonically. A telegram was also dispatched to Greenspun on 3/8/76 indicating the committee's interest in discussing the evidence in his possession. The full committee unanimously approved a subpoena for Greenspun. The committee also approved a subpoena for Washington attorney Edward Pierpont Morgan. Morgan was the attorney on record for Messrs. Roselli and Mayu in 1967. It would appear that he was the source of the Drew Pearson 1967 assassination article, which preceded, some might say precipitated, the 1967 IG report. Guys, let's pull this Drew Pearson 67 assassination article. It was also Morgan's information that led Pearson to go to Chief Justice Warren on January of 1967. Recently received FBI reports indicate that at President Johnson's urging, the Bureau reluctantly interviewed Morgan in April of 67. The reports recount that Morgan's clients had told him in detailed fashion of Castro's retaliation plots against Kennedy, and that Morgan knew of, quote, 2 of Castro's men were living in New Jersey. The return date for Morgan's subpoena on is March 19th, 10 a.m., room 608, and for Greenspun's, March 24th, 2 p.m., S407. Senators Schweiker and Hart will be presiding at these executive sessions. If your senator would like to attend, please let me know at the earliest possible moment. Additionally, certain underlying reports should be reviewed prior to the Morgan session. These will be available for your review. All right. Then we actually have the article. Never mind, guys. I have the article from Hank Greenspun here. Let me see. Oh, it's mostly cut off. Yeah, I can't even read that part of it. I'll read what I can. The most emotional event of this something secession of rifle shots from a 6-story window of the school book depository building in Dallas, Texas. The official version of events was something fired and the first and third snuffed out our young president, the Prince of America. America had a love affair with the handsome grinning Jack, and his assassination left a nation torn with grief and sorrow, in which much of the world joined, demanding to know why this shining star of political firmament was struck down in the full flower of life. Many theories, some sinister, some ridiculous, and some quite plausible, were advanced as to motives and the cause of death. The country had been told by law enforcement investigators that an improbable young man by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald had pulled the trigger which sent a bullet crashing through the brain of the first U.S. president to be born in the 20th century. Momentarily, it seemed certain that the truth behind the killing would surely be developed through Oswald. Following capture, however, Oswald himself, before he had an opportunity to reveal anything, was slain in the Dallas Municipal Building by a seamy nightclub operator named Jack Ruby. Public indignation cried out for the truth, and the demand was quickly answered by Lyndon Baines Johnson with the appointment of a blue ribbon panel headed by Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court Earl Warren. Among the members was Gerald Ford, a congressman at the time and presently the President of the United States. For many weeks, the illustrious panel interrogated witnesses, sifted through all evidence, and finally rendered a 296,000-word report, which in effect said that the president was killed by Oswald acting alone with no plausible determination of his motives. The American public accepted this report with varying degrees of reservation, even though the investigating panel was above reproach and appeared through. It was impossible to accept all the findings at face value with no skepticism. The reporter also had doubts as to the conclusions of the Warren report, and like many others, I can't read that. It's all blacked out. Something steadfastly sought to determine if Oswald acted alone or was part of a gigantic conspiracy. The many books on the subject with their manifold theories were not nearly as impressive as information which came to my attention in early '67. From unimpeachable sources of unquestioned knowledge and integrity, I learned the Central Intelligence Agency had conceived a plot to assassinate Fidel Castro, whom it regarded as a danger to our nation's security. Castro, a dedicated communist, was now heading Cuba, which was once a friendly nation only 90 miles from our shore. The killing of Castro was viewed as an urgent need, coming in the aftermath of the national humiliation attending the debacle of the Bay of Pigs invasion financed by the CIA with the approval of the White House. A further motivation for the killing of the bearded Cuban leader was something, can't read that. Kennedy counteract in catastrophically adverse implication, or his political career occasioned by the slaughter of freedom-loving Cubans, assisted by U.S. advisors in the swamp waters of the Bay of Pigs. So great was the president's concern that his brother Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, actually departed his offices at the Department of Justice and physically located his headquarters at the CIA in order to personally direct the countermeasures he deemed necessary to offset the harmful blow to the Kennedy political fortunes. A blow that was spelled Bay of Pigs. A significant part of Robert Kennedy's strategy revolved about the plan to kill Castro. Investigation revealed it was a coldly calculated plot to be carried out through the enlistment of underworld figures who had been active in Havana gambling operations prior to Castro's overthrow of the Batista government and who still had contacts in Havana. The CIA arranged the enlistment of these organized crime figures and financed their operations. The hired killers first set about reviving contacts in Havana that were close to the Castro regime, secured firearms and poison supplied by the CIA, and then zeroed in on liquidating Castro by a bullet or poison. Investigation shows that 5 separate and distinct assassination attempts were made on the Cuban leader's life, 3 by gunfire and 2 by poison. Yeah, I don't buy any of those at all. Like, none. They don't make any sense. I mean, Cuba was running covert ops with Israel. We were running covert ops with Israel up until 1967. So at the time of the assassination, you're going to tell me we had active plots to take out Castro, who was a fucking intelligence partner of one of our intelligence partners? Like, go fuck yourself. God, it's so stupid. They couldn't knock off some fucking dinky fucking dictator on this island 90 miles off our coast. Fuck you. They destroyed fucking Iraq in like 6 hours. You know? Seriously. All right, is the letter. The Honorable Frank Church, Chairman, Senate Select Subcommittee to Government Operations with respect to intelligence activities, Washington, D.C., 20510. Dear Mr. Chairman, we will soon submit our subcommittee report to the full Senate Select Committee on Intelligence on the performance of the intelligence community in connection with the investigation of the assassination of President John Kennedy. As you know, this work was carried out by a very few staff members over a 3.5-month period and limited to the narrow confines of the subject stated above. We had neither the intention nor capability to follow every rumor, analyze every theory, investigate every charge, or study every alleged conspiracy. We were not given such latitude by either our fellow committee members or Senate Resolution 21 establishing the Select Committee. Thus, our subcommittee report does not attempt to provide a comprehensive evaluation or critique of the Warren Commission report. It does, however, set forth information pertaining particularly to certain U.S. and Cuban activities, which was not made available to the Warren Commission, but which appears to have been relevant to the Warren Commission inquiry. Our subcommittee report raises new questions in the following broad areas: the details of Lee Harvey Oswald's contacts with Soviet and Cuban embassy officials in Mexico, Oswald's contacts with anti-Castro groups, Oswald's contacts with pro-Castro groups, the degree to which knowledge of efforts to assassinate Castro by agencies of this government were deliberately concealed from the Warren Commission, the degree to which attitudes prevalent in the FBI in the 60s affected either the assassination investigation or the FBI dissemination of information to the Warren Commission. We believe such questions can only be answered by further investigation. Such investigation could be carried out by a small unit of the present Select Committee, by the Government Operations Committee, or any other appropriate standing committee of the Senate, or by Senate resolution establishing a new Select Committee for this purpose. In any case, the knowledge and expertise of our own staff members active in this matter should be preserved and exploited. We believe a 3 to 6 month period would be required to pursue these questions. We request a meeting of the full committee at the earliest possible occasion to present our subcommittee reports, to discuss its release by the committee, and to seek guidance on further action to be taken. Memorandum, November 7th, 75. To Paul Wallach from Jim Johnston. Telephone conversation referenced Kennedy assassination plot. Dr. Harrison, who is working on a history project with Senator McGovern, called to pass on information he obtained on an assassination plot against Kennedy. A woman he talked to claims that the CIA and the OAS was the French secret army organization opposed to de Gaulle, plotted to assassinate Kennedy and de Gaulle in 1961 during Kennedy's trip to France. Kennedy's death would be made appear accidental, but the OAS would claim credit for de Gaulle's. A hitman was selected, and his name was Raimondo. The woman had planned to interview Raimondo in October or November of 72 for CBS because Raimondo identified Bernard Barker and another of the Watergate conspirators as two of the people who contacted him about the plot. She claims Raimondo identified these two from photographs of a group of people, none of whom were identified for him. General Salan, S-A-L-A-N, head of the OAS, the Organisation Armée Secrète, called off the assassination. The woman originally was told by CBS that Dan Rather would go to Paris with her to interview Raimondo. Rather backed out. She then teamed up with a man named Baer, B-A-E-R, who was Newsweek bureau chief in Paris in 1972. She claims Baer was working for the CIA and attempted to hinder the attempts to interview Raimondo. She never got the interview because Raimondo left Paris before she got to talk to him and made off with the advance he was paid. She talked to Peter Kalischer in Paris, who gave her some help. He told her she was free to file a story, but because she had no verification, Kalischer did not think it would be printed. Therefore, she has not filed a story on this information. Dr. Harrison said he received the information in confidence because a woman, Doria Robineau, did not want to talk to any authority about this. If we are interested, Dr. Harrison will interview her again on tape and furnish us a transcript. Memorandum to Paul Wallach from Dawson, Dwyer, and Greising, dated December 2nd, 75. Subject, information on James P. Hosty Jr. Background information on Hosty Jr. Mr. Hosty graduated from Notre Dame in June 48. Mr. Hosty joined the FBI on January 21st, 1952. Hosty's first assignment was to Louisville Division, General Investigations. On December 2nd, 53, Hosty was transferred to the Dallas Division. And that source is a testimony of James Hosty before the Warren Commission on 5564. Opening of the Oswald case. On 6/26/62, Oswald was interviewed by SAs Fain and Carter. Oswald was questioned about his stay in Russia and if Soviet agents had contacted him in the U.S. 7/10/62, investigative report of S.A. Fain referenced Lee Harvey Oswald. That's the source of that information. Comments are administrative cover sheets reveal FBI agent asked Oswald to take a polygraph. 2. The opening of the Oswald case. Facts. Special Agent Hosty stated that it was the practice of the FBI to interview immigrants from behind the Iron Curtain on a selective basis, and that Marina Oswald was one of these persons to be interviewed. What? Hosty stated it was the practice of the FBI to interview immigrants from behind the Iron Curtain. Okay, gotcha. So from immigrants from Russia, basically. The source of that is that the report, it following appeared from the report of S.A. Fain, 8/30/62. On 7/12/62, Hosty went to the INS to inquire about Marina Oswald. On 8/16/62, the FBI interviewed Lee Harvey Oswald regarding his background. Comments: is Marina's case reopened or changed from pending to inactive to pending? And then it cuts off. On 7/25/62, the case of both Marina and Lee Harvey Oswald were placed on pending inactive list. Report by S.A. Hosty, 3/25/63. Interesting. Here's a note. This required that often 6 months the case would be reopened and reviewed. While attempting to locate Marina Oswald on March 4th, 1963, S.A. Hosty determined through INS records that Marina had moved from Fort Worth to Elspeth Street in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. Guys, we need to pull a short chronology of Oswald and Marina Oswald's residences post-Soviet Union, please. Report from S.A. Hosty, 325-63. Comments. At this time, the case of Lee Harvey Oswald was closed. 2. Was Lee Harvey Oswald recruited by S.A. Thane or Hosty as an informer on the Cuban exiles? And then Hosty's report stated they left the house and were not evicted. Interesting. In a further attempt to locate Marina Oswald, S.A. Hosty interviewed Mrs. Tobias, the landlady of the Elspeth Street address, on March 11th, 1963. S.A. Hosty found that Mrs. Tobias had evicted Lee and Marina Oswald because of their alleged fighting and his alleged drinking. That just reeks of fiction. All right. On March 13th, 63, S.A. Hosty verified that the Oswalds were living at 214 Neely Street, also in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas. So they were most certainly not at Elspeth long, maybe a couple weeks, 2 weeks tops, a week maybe. And that's from the report of S.A. Hosty, 325-63. Because of their marital problems, S.A. Hosty believed it was not time to interview Marina. Hosty wanted to determine where Lee Harvey Oswald was working. On March 31st, 63, S.A. Hosty requested the supervisor in Dallas to reopen the case to him, and he would interview Marina in 45 days. Testimony of James P. Hosty, 5564, before the Warren Commission. In May of 63, S.A. Hosty found that the Oswalds had left the Dallas area. That's right, they left at the end of April. Hosty testimony, 5564. Approximately the first week of June 63, S.A. Hosty received information from the Dallas informant T2 of the FBI that Lee Harvey Oswald had handed out FPCC leaflets on April 21st, 63 in Dallas. That's false. Blatantly false. Investigative Report 91063, S.A. Hosty. He's not even alleged to have ever been in contact with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee until May of 63 anyway. So this is all bullshit. He was never in contact with them at all. It was Kerry Thornley. S.A. Hosty does not believe the April 21st, 63 event took place because he would have heard about it. And then at this time, Dallas had no information or evidence linking the Fair Play for Cuba Committee with Dallas in any way. That's absolutely correct. On July 17th, 63, S.A. Hosty received a communication from the New Orleans office advising that Lee Harvey Oswald was in New Orleans, and the New Orleans FBI was requesting information on Oswald be furnished. That's from the 8/23/63 Airtel SAC Dallas to Director Lee Harvey Oswald and Marina Oswald. What did Lee Oswald do in New Orleans to be noticed by the FBI? That's number one. And number two is at this time, Dallas had no information or evidence linking the FPCC to Dallas in any way. It says that in duplicate. All right. 7/29/63, New Orleans office requests to verify residence of subjects. 8/23/63, Airtel SAC Dallas to Director Lee Harvey Oswald. New Orleans office notifies Dallas on August 13th of 63 of a change of address for Oswald's to 4905 Magazine Street. S.A. Hosty testified that he had no further contact with the Oswald case until October of 63. That's from his testimony on 5564 and from 8/21/63 report, Director to SAC New Orleans, with 3 copies to Dallas. Comments. Incident in New Orleans, 8/9/63 is Oswald's arrest, and however, he prepared a report of September 10th, 63 regarding Lee Harvey Oswald. On October 3rd, 63, S.A. Hosty received a communication from New Orleans that Oswald had left New Orleans. Notes, Marina departed New Orleans 9/25/63 and requested the Dallas office to locate the Oswalds. All right, so that's good to know. So Marina left on 9/25, but remember it was on 9/26, Oswald's still in New Orleans where he closed his P.O. box. Marina departed in a car with Texas plates while Lee stayed behind. However, he disappeared the next day. That's from a 9/25/63 report by S.A. Kack, K-A-A-C-K. Case was sent to Dallas office and opened by Hosty. How did they, New Orleans, know to send the case to Dallas? That's an interesting question. And was the Fair Play for Cuba Committee used as a front between or wedge between the Communist Party and the SWP, the Cuban Nationals? And then we have, at this time, they were aware of Oswald's FPCC connection, and that would have been in September. Okay, that makes sense. That fits the timeline. On October the 25th, 1963, S.A. Hosty learned that Oswald had contacted the Soviet embassy in Mexico City in the early part of October of 63. Source, 10/24/63, airtel from SAC New Orleans to the director, Lee Harvey Oswald, with enclosure of 10/18/63 cablegram from Legat, Mexico City, to director Lee Harvey Oswald. So Hosty's getting pulled into the loop like later in that month. On the 29th of October, 1963, S.A. Hosty received word from New Orleans advising that they had a change of address for Lee and Marina Oswald to 2515 West 5th Street, Irving, Texas. Yes, that is super duper important, the change of address form, because that change of address form was dated September 26th, which is so important. 10/25/63, airtel to SAC New Orleans, to director SAC Dallas, gives Oswald's address and seeks verification. Hosty conducted a pretext interview of Marina Oswald to verify the address on 10/30/63. That's from a 10/30/63 airtel to the director. On November 1st, 63, Hosty contacted Ruth Payne in an attempt to locate Lee Harvey Oswald. That's referenced in the November 4th airtel Dallas to director, 11/9 letter from Oswald to the Soviet embassy. I'm going to have to look into this letter from Oswald to the Soviet embassy. It's obviously bunk. 11/19/63 airtel SAC Washington field director to director. And then 3/19/64 testimony of Ruth Payne before the Warren Commission. And the notes here say, Ruth Payne told S.A. Hosty that Lee Harvey Oswald lived in Oak Cliff and worked at the Texas School Book Depository. 2, Ruth Payne stated Lee Harvey Oswald alleged the FBI had him fired from every job he had. 3, letter from Oswald implies that he was present during Hosty interview of 11/1/63. And 4, possible mail intercept. During most of the interview with Ruth Payne on November 1st, 63, Marina Oswald was napping with her children. The source of that is testimony of James Hosty, 5/5/64. Comments, Hosty asked Marina no questions on November 1st, 63. S.A. Hosty wanted to be assured that Lee Harvey Oswald was not in a sensitive industry. On November 4th, 63, S.A. Hosty requested Dallas become the office of origin. Comment, Dallas became office of origin for Marina 11/15/63 and for Lee 11/19/63. That's interesting. On 11/5/63, S.A. Hosty made another attempt to locate Lee Harvey Oswald as Hosty and Wilson stopped at Ruth Payne's. However, she was unable to obtain his address. That's from the testimony of Hosty before the Warren Commission. Notes say Hosty had no contact with Marina on November 5th. And 2, what was the extent of Hosty's contacts with the Oswald family other than those reported in the official FBI reports? On November 21st, 63, S.A. Hosty took wanted for treason posters to the Secret Service. He also assisted another agent giving information about a man from Denton, Texas. That's from his Warren Commission testimony. And he gave his information to S.A. Warner. As of 9 a.m. on November 22nd, there had been no contact between the Secret Service and the Dallas FBI office. That was from the testimony of Hosty. Again, 5/5/64. After meeting on 11/22/63, Hosty joined an Army intelligence agent and an agent of the alcohol tax unit of the Treasury Department until 11:30 that morning. As from Hosty's testimony. And while eating lunch, Hosty learned that both the president and vice president had been shot. Upon receiving word that the president had been shot, S.A. Hosty returned to the FBI office, but was sent to Parkland Hospital only to be asked to return to the office. That's from his testimony again. When Hosty arrived in the FBI office, he was told to review his files for leads on the possible assassin. At 13:30, Hosty received word that Tippit had been slain in Oak Cliff and the suspect was surrounded in a movie theater. After 1,400 hours, Hosty received information that the suspect was identified as Lee Harvey Oswald. Hosty stated he was shocked because he had no reason to believe that Oswald was capable to assassinate the President of the United States. Second comment, Lee Harvey Oswald was a security risk of a sort, but not the type of person who would engage in violence. S.A. Hosty immediately pulled Oswald's file when he found out the Dallas became the origin office. And Lee Harvey Oswald was a security risk. I already read that. S.A. Hosty took the file from Oswald to Gordon Shanklin. SAC Gordon Shanklin later sent S.A. Hosty to the Dallas Police Department to sit in on the interview of Lee Oswald. Testimony of James P. Hosty, 5564. At approximately 3 p.m. when Hosty was on his way to the interview room, he was told by Lieutenant Reville that he had a hot lead regarding a man named Lee from the Texas Schoolbook Depository. Notes, Hosty responded by telling Reville that Lee Harvey Oswald, an employee of the Texas Schoolbook Depository, was arrested at 2 p.m. Running from the basement to the third floor, Hosty told Reville Lee Harvey Oswald was the main suspect in the case. 3. Reville was also told by Hosty that Oswald was the one who had defected and returned in 62. S.A. Hosty told Lieutenant Reville that he believed Oswald possessed no potential for violence. And that came from his own testimony, the testimony of Lieutenant Jack Reville, CE 709, Commission's Exhibit 709, 838, and 711, and the testimony of V.J. Bryan, 513-64, before the Warren Commission. Lieutenant Reville contradicted Hosty in his memo of 11/22/63. Reville states, Agent Hosty further states that the FBI was aware of the subject Oswald, and they had information that this subject was capable of committing the assassination of the president. 2, according to Lieutenant Reville, S.A. Hosty came running to him and said, Jack, a communist killed the president. We have information that he was capable of this. And 3, a report was made within an hour of Hosty's statement. S.A. Bookout and Hosty entered the office of Captain Fritz where Oswald was being questioned by Captain Fritz. During the questioning, S.A.'s Hosty and Bookout just observed. This interview commenced at 3:15 p.m., and when Lee Harvey Oswald heard S.A. Hosty's name, he reacted violently, stating, Oh, so you're Hosty. I've heard about you. I'm going to fix you, FBI. If you want to talk to me, don't bother my wife. Come and see me. You can't believe any of that stuff. You can't believe anything that any of these people say that Oswald said, period. 2, according to S.A. Bookout, both he and Hosty did question Oswald. And then during the interrogation, Oswald denied owning the rifle. He told Captain Fritz the following. He had defected to the Soviet Union, admitted that he was secretary for the FPCC for New Orleans, false. He lived at 1026 Beckley under the name O.H. Lee, that's also false. Had been employed at the TSBD since 10/15/63 and has access to the entire building, that's another one that's false. Went to lunch at noon on 11/22/63 and had purchased a Coca-Cola to have with his lunch and was in there when JFK passed the building. That's all completely blatantly false and easily disprovable. Notes, after Oswald denied owning the rifle, he stated that truly the superintendent of the TSB had one in his office a few days before the assassination. He left, here you go, number 6, he left because with all the confusion there would be no more work. That's why he said that he left. And he took a bus home, changed and proceeded to a movie, carried the pistol. Everything that they're saying that he said is a complete lie. This is all fiction that they made up. He didn't say any of this stuff because he didn't do any of this stuff. He wouldn't have known to say any of this stuff. These fucking people, I swear to God. He denied being in Mexico except to visit Tijuana on the border, which is probably true. But he remember, you can't believe any time that they say that Oswald said something, ever. Not once. Oswald emphatically denied shooting Officer Tippit or President Kennedy, as per Bookout and Hosty, and Hosty asked him if he had been in Mexico City. Hosty did not tell Police Chief Curry about the New Orleans arrest or the FBI file on Lee Harvey Oswald. The interrogation of Lee Harvey Oswald ended at 4:05 p.m., and Hosty said he never saw Oswald again. Notes remained in the outer office of Captain Fritz until 8 p.m. At 6 p.m. on 11/22, SAIC Sorrells and 5 other Secret Service agents entered Captain Fritz's office to interview Lee Harvey Oswald. S.A. Hosty knew the FBI had no jurisdiction over the assassination and believed if anyone did, would it be the Secret Service. S.A. Hosty later discovered no federal agency had jurisdiction. S.A. Hosty called Sorrells aside and told him that the FBI headquarters could furnish Secret Service headquarters files on Lee Harvey Oswald, and there were 2 items that Hosty couldn't give Sorrells because they were secret: contacts with the Soviet embassy in Mexico City and Washington, D.C. Comments: Hosty also talked with S.A. Patterson of the Secret Service and told him Oswald had made contact with 2 subversive agents around 15 days prior to the assassination. 2, contact with the embassy in Mexico City was well before the assassination, so who or what were the subversive agents Oswald contacted 15 days prior to the assassination? All right, so that brings us to events after 11/23, and we will get to that list tomorrow. That's going to do it, guys. Tune in on Friday to Fresh and Fit, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'll be on there. All right? It's going to do it for me, guys. I'll see you.